All right, people. Yes, I'm outside. It is simply too nice to not be outside. We have a Q&A on tap today, and I don't have time to mess around. We have so many questions and so many good questions. I don't want to screw around doing anything else except having a little mate to get myself fired up. Question number 1 from Señor Calabeza Tres. Any insight on stock photography? Yes, but lacking in anything from the current industry. I haven't been around the photo industry for about 10 years. I stopped submitting to the agency that I was with years and years and years ago because the value of stock had been so diminished over the years. As soon as photographers signed royalty-free contracts and eventually microstock contracts, they completely undermined that entire industry. So stock has been devalued to a level that I'm not sure it's ever going to recover from. I'm sure there are exceptions to that rule, and there are probably still good stock agencies out there. I just don't know because I don't do that kind of work anymore. In addition, stock photography was never my favorite kind of work because it was too safe, too standard, too sterile. And so it was always a battle of trying to get stuff in that had a personality. But again, I'm sure there's exceptions to that rule. All right, moving on. Question 2. From Kurt, if you don't fix your negatives properly or for long enough, will they fade or degrade in the future? I have some negatives from about 10 years ago that I recently got out to print, but they looked really transparent. Short answer, Kurt, yes. You have to do a professional archival fix on both your negatives and also your subsequent prints if you want them to be archival. With a print, that typically means 2 fixer baths for a print. It's a long story, I don't want to get too much into details, but yes, you need to do an archival fix, and that tends to be the strength of the fixer, the duration that your film is in the fixer, and how much agitation. All right, Kurt, I'm glad you brought this up. Third question, second from Kurt. What the hell is that round cup with the straw in it that you skipped past in your last film? Spill the beans. This is a mate gourd. Mate, if you go anywhere in Argentina, Uruguay, it's what people drink every day, all day. It's fantastic. It's a loose leaf, I don't know what you would call it, tea-ish. It's bitter. This is called a bombilla, which is the metal straw. This is not the bombilla that I bought in Uruguay with this gourd, thanks to my friend Martin. Martin took me there, although Diego was also around, hovering, different places. The original bombilla I have is temporarily misplaced, as my wife likes to say. It's not lost, it's temporarily misplaced. There's a big difference, and that's what mate is. If you've never had it, it's worth investigating. Question number 4, opinions on film emulations and if you like or use any. I have exactly 2 presets in Lightroom, 1 color, 1 black and white. That's it. Post-production and digital, it's just not something that my heart's into, so I try to keep it as simple as possible. I don't spend a lot of time trying to emulate film because film and digital are different. Digital has its strengths and weaknesses, and there are certain things about it that look fantastic, and the same with film. If I want film look or need film look, I use film. I don't spend time. I've never seen a digital file prepped to look like film that looks like film. And I find it odd that software companies are still trying to emulate 60-year-old emulsions. That seems a bit misguided to me. And this is pandemic hair, by the way. I'm never cutting my hair again. Question number 5. Curious to hear your thoughts on the future of photojournalism and or long-term doc work. I just entered a photojournalism program. Good luck, my son. After a visual art degree, because long story short, I was more interested in stories than others. I feel as though there's far more opportunity for experimentation, multimedia collaboration, and storytelling than what is being utilized in the industry. What are your thoughts? Paige, I should have said, good luck, my daughter. So Paige, I'm stoked that you're in a PJ program. I'm stoked that you're in a documentary program. I don't really care what the industry says about photojournalism and documentary work. If you go back to the 1990s, American Photo Magazine was running cover stories titled, "Is Photojournalism Dead?" It was not dead then, and it's not dead now, and it's not going to be for a long time because, number 1, people like you are still out there wanting to do it. 2, here's where it gets interesting. When I studied photojournalism and got out, my entire career was in the hands of other people, namely editors in New York City. So I had to pick up a landline telephone and make phone calls, and they made decisions about my life and my career. It was completely ridiculous, but that's the way it was. Now, with the tools at your disposal, you can be your own weather system. You can be your own entity. If you look on YouTube, for example, I just saw a clip. David Pakman, P-A-K-M-A-N. He's a YouTuber that's a journalist that has a channel on YouTube that's about news. And I think he's got over a million subscribers, and he has his own news ecosystem. Would I rather watch David Pakman over CNN? Yeah, any day of the week, because I'm not getting the show and the corporate entity that is CNN. The debacle, the celebrity, the whining, all the kind of stuff that makes mainstream news media today, how awful it really is. So you can be your own independent journalist if you consistently make good work and you have the trust of your audience. So don't give up on PJ or documentary work. Question number 6. How did you get new clients for kids photography? Wow, someone dug into my past to come up with that question. So yes, at one point in my life, I was a portrait photographer specializing in photographing children. Now, if you had asked me in photojournalism school if this was something I was ever going to do, I would have said absolutely not. I remember the second I became a children's portrait photographer, my neighbor, who had 2 small girls, came over to my house and said, "Do you photograph children?" And I said, "Absolutely not." And she said, "Great, I'm leaving them here." So she left, and in my living room are 2 small girls waiting for me to do something or say something. And I thought, okay, I better make some pictures. And so I photographed children the way that I would photograph a documentary project. Secondarily, I shot a Hasselblad and Tri-X film. And not a single portrait photographer in my entire area, I don't think in my entire state, maybe even in the western half of the country at the time, was using square format 6x6 black and white to photograph families and kids. They were all shooting digital. So my work immediately looked different, and my work was being created in a way that made me happy as a photographer. I didn't look at the industry and say, I've got to conform, I have to shoot digital, I have to do everything that everybody else is doing. I said, I'm going to do my own thing. And I lived and died by the fact I was doing my own thing. I charged differently, my billing was different, and I told people, I do not want my work on social media. Do not put these photographs on social. And if a client hemmed and hawed or said, I really want social, I just would not do the shoot for them. I told people I was photographing for the wall of their house, a single image that would be good enough to last for them, their children, and their children's children. That's what I was shooting for. So you have to distinguish yourself right away. And it's not just with your photographs, it's with your mentality and your philosophy about what you're doing as a business. Question number 7. I want to start a long-term project, but I'm in a roadblock. I'm not a documentary photographer. For my non-paid work, I seek beautiful scenes or items, mainly in nature, and how to show them in the most simple yet interesting way. How does one determine if that is a good long-term project? What constitutes an attached project? I don't have any grand plans or ideas, but I want to start building a cohesive body of work. Suzanne, it's a great question. And the simple answer is whatever you find interest in is a legitimate project. I could do a project on this table that my wife built by hand and just put some sort of sealer on, but she accidentally put it on when the table was wet and now it's bubbling. That's a whole nother story. But I could do a project on this table if I really wanted to. I could trace back what kind of wood this is and where this particular piece of wood came from, the people who were involved in cutting it, sourcing it, selling it, etc. I could build out from this one table and I've got an entire project. It's whatever you are passionate about. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. If you like nature, how many landscape books have I seen in my life? Tons. So a lot of people are doing projects like that. Go for it. Question number 8. Hello, I would like to thank you for your wonderful videos. You're very welcome. I would like to create photo books that show little trips with my wife and my son as memories. Great idea. Do you have any tips on how to create small books consisting of 10 to 20 pictures? Easy. Go to Blurb, go to Trade Books, 24-page minimum page count, set, done, soft cover, super inexpensive. Use the standard color paper, which is probably the highest quality paper. It's going to look best with illustrated content, combinations of words and pictures. And just start there. You might actually end up paying more for shipping than you will for the actual book, depending on where you live. And I do these books all the time. Every time I do a documentary project, I do a small trade book portfolio from that story. And now I have a big stack of them that I can lay out on a table when someone asks me what my work is like. Next question. I think it's number 9. What's your take on naming photographs? And this came from Conger, 1977-2. What's your take on naming photographs? I never name a photograph unless I'm absolutely forced to. Just like I don't sign them, number them, etc. The only time I would name a photograph is if I was going into the gallery or museum space, and sometimes you have to provide details of an image. Could be a title. In your case, what you're calling a name would be an image title, location it was made, date it was made. You never add tech specs. That's only for the geeky online photo world. No one cares in the gallery collector space what your settings were, what camera you used. It's all nonsense. That's the only time I would do it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that when I make the picture in the field, that's the pinnacle of my experience. Everything that comes after for me is a letdown. I don't care about social. I don't care about fame. I don't care about notoriety. I don't care how many people see it. I don't care about sharing it. It's the experience of making it in the field. So naming pictures for me would be for no reason. Moving on, question number 10. How do you recommend using different formats in your work? I saw a video of yours, where it seemed like you were using a 35 rangefinder, true, and then a folding medium format for portraits. Can you talk about this a bit? I can, and I will. Yes, what you're talking about is the film I released a week or so ago called Una pura verdad, A Simple Truth, and I was using a Leica rangefinder, which is pretty standard for me, and I was using a Fuji film 6x6 or 6x7 collapsible folding rangefinder, medium format camera, which was a gem. It was fragile as hell. If you folded it the wrong way, it would break and you were done. But if you knew the trick to folding it, it was amazing, it was sharp, it was small. There's an upside and a downside to using multiple formats. I should have stuck with the Leica and done nothing but 35 black and white. But 35 black and white is not exotic, it's not sexy, it's nothing. It's one of the hardest formats to make interesting in the modern world, at least to other people. The medium format is easy, it's a drug. It is the heroine of photo projects. It's because everything you frame and shoot looks good no matter what it is. So you trick yourself into thinking that you're making progress. You trick yourself into thinking that the work is better than it is. And you do it because you're insecure, that you need to make progress. Your time is limited. You don't have a lot of options. Every single scenario you find yourself in has to be target rich. You have to walk away with work. So you give yourself these gimmicks of using 4x5 or 810 or 6.9 or 6.7 or 6x6. Had I consolidated on that one format and done the entire project with a 6x6, that'd be one thing. But I didn't, I mixed. And again, it's not like I'm trying to put this work out in front of the world and tell you how great I am. I'm doing it for personal reasons. And so ultimately it doesn't matter, and I enjoy using the both of them. All right, moving forward. Again, good questions, really good questions. Do you look for shots or wait for them to come to you in your creative work? I do both. Also, I'm curious if you compose in black and white or convert in the post. I always shoot in color, convert to black and white in post, unless I'm shooting film, obviously, if I commit to film. Here's the thing about film. If you're shooting a black and white negative, you're exposing for the shadow, processing for the highlight. If I shoot color and I'm shooting transparency, I'm shooting for the highlight. So you can't just go into the field with a mixed bag of films and have your brain set on the same setting. You have to flip between exposures for black and white and exposures for color. If you're shooting color neg, yes, you can get away with it doing it the same. So I typically, the last time I shot color film and black and white film together was 2012 in Panama. And I enjoyed it. 2 Leicas, 2 lenses, half color, half black and white. And I did a whole project of snapshots. I was there with another photographer who, by the way, learned every single thing he knows in life from me. But I went with him and I was just there to look around. And I didn't want to burden myself, and I didn't have time to do an official project. So I just thought, I'm going to do both. But it's rare that I do that. And in terms of looking for shots or waiting for them, I do both. I'm constantly hunting when I'm on a project, but then sometimes you have to wait for them to come to you, and then you also have to be a reactionary, which is you take what you can get. Okay, this is from Greg. Greg, great to see your name on here. Peace, Dan. I don't need another camera at all. Oh, I know where this is going. You already bought it, all right? You already bought it. But you've never had any real-time shooting, but have never had any real-time shooting digital medium format. The GFX 50R is a camera on my list for that purpose, but I'm curious what your feelings are about medium format photography and why it grabs us so much. Its aspect ratio, its fall off, and its quality. The aspect ratio is slightly different, especially when you're shooting something like 6.6 or 6.9, and the fall off on those lenses is remarkable. It's beautiful. And the quality of the prints. Kevin Fickling, who's a Fuji-sponsored photographer, had some prints at the Palm Springs Festival a couple years ago from that camera and was passing them around, and I was both mortified and blown away. Mortified because the print quality was so much higher than the XT2 that I'm still using, which is, I don't necessarily need a print that size, but I was blown away. The GFX 50R is a camera that I would take all day long. I'm just never gonna spend that kind of money on a camera right now. I've got too many other irons to, fish to fry, irons in the fire. But I would say go for it. Okay, keep moving here. Question whatever, 12, 13. If I can find my way back. I actually would be interested in hearing your thoughts on 35mm Tri-X, especially how much you're okay to push it. So you can push Tri-X up to 3200, but I don't recommend it. I wouldn't really go with Tri-X above about 800, 640 even. You could go to 1600. There's a lot of ways around this. You could do stand development. You could do low temp development with no agitation. There's a lot of ways of bringing it down. The problem with Tri-X, when you go anywhere above like 1,000 pushing it, is it gets really contrasty. And when you have T-Max 3200 sitting there waiting for you, that you can shoot at 800 all the way up to 12,000, I would sort of go to that film. Now, I'm a grain lover. I love T-Max 3200. I'm not a big fan of the Ilford 3200. It's a great film. It just doesn't have enough grain for me. It's too fine grain. So Tri-X for me was 320 normally is how I shot it, and then 640 if I had to push it a little bit. Okay, I've been pondering whether to buy an iPad for sketching, photo editing, and journaling. How do you find your iPad for journaling? I don't use the iPad for journaling, and I don't use my phone. I don't want to spend any more time than I already do in front of a screen. I spend hours and hours and hours, and there's nothing more life-sucking to me than sitting in front of a computer monitor all day long. It's awful. I can't believe I do it as much as I do. And I can't believe you do it as much as you do. All of us as a collective, we've got to get back outside into the tangible world, talk to one another, touch one another when it's safe, obviously, and all within the bounds of the playing field, if you know what I mean. But I just mean that I don't want to spend any more time in front of that screen. So I don't want to use it for that. What I do use the iPad for, the Pro in particular, now I've done it, is I read about 80 books a year, and I take notes on the books. And I will, depending on the importance of the book, will print those out and tack them in my journal because I need to go back and reference them over a period of time around the time that I'm reading the book. So that's what I do. But if you're going to journal, I would use a pen and a paper or pencil and paper. It's cheaper, easier, better, and over the long run, you toss it in a bin, and 100 years from now, it's still gonna be there. Question number too many. Hi Dan, I'd like to know how you do your research for documentary work and how you get in contact with locals before you arrive in a country. I just start reaching out. I'm not shy. I try to be as professional as possible, as courteous as possible, and I try to throw in a little bit of humor. And I just reach out, and I have my elevator pitch about who I am and what I'm doing down. And it's concise, and there's a little bit of humor in saying, I'm on my way and I'm thinking of doing this project and I'm curious your thoughts, or do you have any ideas or suggestions, or how do you feel about this as someone who's from that country? And it starts to build. Most of the best projects I've done, the people who have helped me do it, it's been 1 or 2 people maximum, because you develop a relationship and a friendship with someone, and once you go back over and over and over again, that's basically all you need. It's very rare that I have a team of people or somebody helping me on a project. It would be great. Someone's coming down the road and they mean business. Let's see who it is. Sounds like a truck. UPS? No. Huh. Amerigas. Time for the old gas delivery. Okay, let's see here. Okay, this is from Andre. I'm interested in having your perspective in the process of publishing a photo book, particularly the pros and cons of self-publishing versus going with an established publisher. So Andre, that is a wonderful question. The problem is that is such a complex answer that I can't do it on a Q&A. That has to be its own separate film. Just the decision between self-pub and publisher covers about 20 different additional questions and subcategories that will be based on you, your talent, your notoriety, your network, your audience building, your marketing skills, your distribution skills, your networking skills. It is a complicated endeavor to really put a book out into the world. There are smaller ways of doing that, and I am a huge fan of the smaller ways. I'm a huge fan of going alone. I'm a huge fan of pre-selling your books, of building your own audience that's native to you, and doing a small run of books that you sell out and move on with your life. Just to give you one quick pitfall I've seen in my adult life, I don't know, hundreds, if not thousands of photographers bury themselves financially in bad publishing deals. and then lose 2 years of their life in the relationship. Not just the publishing cycle of getting the book out, but then the subsequent year of having to try to move books. And selling illustrated books has never been easy in the history of the world. And it's so complicated, my head is spinning with all the things that I can share with you, but I will at some point. Okay, this next question. At the beginning of Minamata, which is Gene Smith's project, by the way, Smith writes, the first word I would remove from the folklore of journalism is the word objective. And perhaps free, as in free press, should be the second word removed. What are your thoughts on this? There is no such thing really as pure objectivity, unless you're the Buddha, maybe, I don't know. But most of the time, we all are products of our environment, our family, our history, our politics. We get skewed. In today's day and age, with basically atomized disinformation on a global scale, it would be nearly impossible to be objective. When you're a photojournalist or you're a journalist in general, that is what one of your goals is, to try to remain that as much as possible. In terms of media in the world today, it's very, very rare that you're not going to have corporate influence on reporting. I've seen this firsthand over and over and over again by doing assignments for both big media outlets and small that were owned by big corporate entities that were controlling what the news was. Who saw it, what they got, and it's at a scale that's alarming. If you've never been inside of a big media organization and been in these meetings and watched what was delivered as the news based on a very small cobble of very wealthy individuals at positions of power inside the media, you might not know how skewed it really is. I'm a much bigger fan of print media as opposed to television. So that's one place to go, I think, for better journalism is print over television. And also, what are your thoughts? Is it possible for someone who wants to have their own dark room to be environmentally conscious? Not really. Certain chemicals are better than others. Certain brands are better. Sprint System Chemistry out of the East Coast, their stuff is environmentally pretty solid. But I don't know how you are a photographer, especially a documentary photographer or a photojournalist, and call yourself an environmentalist. You can be concerned about the environment or interested in the environment, but the fact is, if you're on an airplane every week, you're not an environmentalist, really. All of these, that camera, this computer, all the electronics have toxicity in them at their DNA level. The New York Times years ago wrote an article about the digital landfill and the toxicity from our constant regurgitation of objects and what it's doing to the planet, rare earth metals, etc. And the darkroom is horrible. Not only is it horrible for chemistry and disposal, but it's horrible for you as a human being because it's terrible for your body. Having said that, love the darkroom. And don't let anyone tell you differently. I'll take a silver print over an inkjet print any day of the week. And these folks that tell you those values of those two things are the same, oh yeah, an inkjet print, same values as silver print. They're out of their mind. They're doing that because they're trying to keep the industry afloat. So I get it, but I don't believe it. Next question, do you care what lens you use, vintage or modern, or does it ease of use trump all? I don't really care. Some of my lenses, I guess you would call them vintage because I bought them when the cameras were relatively new. So that would mean, 30, 40 years old. I guess that's vintage. And some of my modern lenses, I just ordered a 16 to 80 Fuji yesterday, so I don't really care. It's about the result for me is the only thing that matters. Okay, we're getting close here. Your thoughts on taking the moment in and enjoying it versus photographing the moment and not really being there. Okay, whoever said this, Q3DM172, this is the best question because I just had this thought in my head 2 weeks ago trying to make a film in 24 hours. And I had 2 motion cameras, 2 still cameras. My wife had a still camera. I had an audio recorder and I had my drone and I was writing a script. And I was like, I'm here in the mountains, but I'm not actually here in the mountains. I'm trying to make a film and I can't do 2 things at once. There was no moment where I just sat down and said, yeah, I think I'm going to enjoy myself. I just was consumed with making content. And so you have to be able to turn that on and off. I dream of a post-COVID world where I can take a still camera, preferably my Leica with a 50, and a bag of Tri-X and my journal, and I can go and do an old school project like I used to do. I just got off the phone with a very famous photographer from Latin America who I've known for years and years and years. He's one of the most interesting people I've ever met in photography, and every conversation I've ever had with him has completely changed my life. And I thought, he asked me about me and what I was doing and how my life was going. And I said, I don't get much time for photography anymore. And I took for granted what I was doing when I met you during that era of my life where I had 2 Leicas and a bag of Tri-X and I didn't have a job. I was freelancing and I had time and I could say, I'm gonna go here for a month and go do a project, and I would. And I had no cell phone, I had no laptop, there was no tether, no umbilical cord back to the world. I just went and did the project. I dream about those days. So hopefully at some point I'll be there. All right, we gotta keep going here, people. Wow, it's been 30 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna do one more, two more. Hey Dan, I've enjoyed your previous videos or rants regarding film. I always love it when people say I'm ranting, because to me, this isn't even remotely close to a rant. You should ask my wife what a rant is. She'll tell you. She'll have a look of terror on her face, but she'll tell you. My wife is awesome, by the way. I mean, awesome. Like, she's the only reason I can do any of this stuff. She's hilarious too, and I jump out and scare her at least once or twice a day. She falls for it every single time. I've enjoyed the previous videos regarding film and what a lot of the popular YouTubers seem to miss when it comes to accurately sharing information about shooting film with regard to video topics such as how to shoot film as cheaply as possible or how to get started shooting film. Which things do you think these YouTubers completely miss but are much more important than the typical recommendations that they all seem to recycle? Also, how do you personally define the different genres of many newcomers when they think about things like documentary, street photojournalism? All right, so 2 questions. In terms of what the YouTubers are missing, I don't think they're missing anything. I think film YouTube hipsters, and I'm gonna put those 3 people together, they're not hurting anybody. I've mentioned this before. They're helping to keep film alive, which is a great thing. And I don't think they're missing anything. I think they're choosing to highlight what will build following. That's it. That's what YouTubers are about, 100%. The people who've committed heavy to YouTube are about one thing, or really anyone who's committed to social media. It's about building following. And so when you make that decision, you've thrown all your ethics and morals and standards out the window, because the general population, how do I put this politely? They're not refined. They're looking for fast food. And so you give them fast food and you'll build your following up. I mean, to me, the idea of film is, who cares? I love film, I really do. But the fact is, you cannot hide from your contact sheets. If any of these folks gave me a contact sheet, in 30 seconds, I can tell you what level of photography they're at. And I can tell you if they're going up or they're going down, because you cannot hide from your negatives or your contact sheets. That's a very interesting story to me. There are half a dozen photographers here in town that I would love to go out to and say, let me see your contact sheets. You know what they would do? If of course they had access to them and we weren't in COVID times, they'd be like, here they are. Because they know how good they are. They know what they have. And they know that I could look at their contact sheets and be blown away and say, wow, yes, these are the 3 that were chosen in the story that all of us know about. But look at what else was on those contact sheets. Look at Robert Frank's Americans contact sheets and what was not printed in the exhibition. Something like 72,000 photographs, and they chose 51 or something for the book. And what was not in the book is remarkable. I mean, the guy had a ton of stuff that was not in the book. So I don't think YouTubers are missing. I think they're making decisions based on building following, which I get, because that's what the only thing that YouTube is about, really, except if you want to learn how to like unclog a toilet at 4 in the morning with a, I don't know, you don't have a toilet plunger, you have like your kid's bicycle seat. And you're like, how do I do this? Somebody on YouTube has figured it out. And that film is there for you, for your salvation. Okay, in terms of naming genres and newcomers, I don't think it matters, but the difference to me between photojournalism and documentary is journalism, anything pertaining to journalism has a news angle and a time element, whereas a documentary photographer can work from years and no one even knows they're out there. For example, you could take Jim Nachtwey, who's arguably the single most important photojournalist of the modern era, take Jim Nachtwey's work from Afghanistan, and take Ed Grozda's work from Afghanistan. Ed Grozda did 2 books. He did Afghanistan 80 to 89, and he did Afghan Diary 90 to 99 or something. He was the last photographer in the country, and the Taliban was already there, and they were allowing him to shoot. It's a remarkable story. Ed's a remarkable dude. Very different styles of work. Nachtwey would go in and out. He was probably on assignment for Time, and he was doing more journalistic frontline stuff, and then all of a sudden, Grozda's there for years. And he's not, maybe doing an assignment here and there, but he's really thinking about long-term projects, books, etc. There's a lot of examples. And by the way, those guys both cross over. Nachtwey does a lot of pretty remarkable documentary work as well. But to me, journalism has a time element, news angle. All right, I think we're gonna cap it there. I'm almost out of breath. My mouth is dry. I'm out of mate. The dog is barking. There's a gas truck over there. The sun's in my eyes. My hair's messed up. But I just want you to know I went above and beyond. And all joking aside, these were great questions, and I only had like 11 left. But great questions, and I will try to get to the rest of these on another installment. I love answering questions. I not only love the questions, but I have a lot of really weird data stuck away in my head that I think is actually helpful for some of you. So keep them coming.